Hey there everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. And I'm very excited to be bringing you this project that I created using the new Tim Holtz Chapter 3 collection. Now this collection is extensive, and as Tim Holtz likes to call it, it's basically the foundational release. It has everything you need in order to build amazing projects. You can use these elements on their own, or you can mix and match them together to make some really cool projects. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. So on my desk, I have quite a few things. I have all of the Tim Holtz new Chapter 3 collection, and I'll be using a variety of elements from this collection, although I did not use the embossing folders. I thought I was going to, but then I ended up changing my mind as I went along. I also have a collection of different pattern papers that I'll be selecting from. These are just things I had in my stash. Feel free to pick out pattern papers you like. I'm also going to pull in some transparencies from Tim Holtz. I'm going to use a few of his botanical ephemera packs, which I really like storing in my Simon Says Stamp Positively Clear boxes. They're really great for that. The pockets are good too. I'm going to be using the etc. tag. This is the largest one of those tags, and it's huge. I'm going to use that as the base for my project today, and that's what we're going to start with first. I want to paint this, but I want to cover it first with some gesso. So I'm just covering this entire thing with white gesso. My plan is to do some painting with distress paints and also some white acrylic paint from Dina Wakley, and I just want to create a really pretty background. But I also want some texture on that background. So I'm going to take a Simon Says Stamp die. This is a beautiful plate die that we have, and I'm going to cut this from some watercolor paper. Once I have that cut, you can see how it's going to pair up with some of the elements that we'll be using today, and I'll show you how I made those. This beautiful die cut plate looks so good with the pattern papers that I picked, and I wanted it to be a texture for my painting. So I'm going to tear this up and apply it onto my tag with some collage medium. I'm covering the entire thing with my fingers. You could use a brush if you want to. You just want to get every inch of this covered with the adhesive. Then we're going to lay this down on top of our etc. tag. And I'm going to have these floral elements coming in from a couple of the corners. I actually ended up having a total of 2 die cuts that I split into 3 pieces. And I really loved how these created some really nice texture for my painting. So I'm going to apply this down and really press it down with a brayer, and the collage medium will bond well to this project. Once everything dried, I brought in my distress paints, and I'm going to start painting with a combination of white acrylic paint, Stormy Skies, and also Salvage Patina. And I'm not cleaning my brush in between each color. I'm letting everything mix and blend together, and I just really liked the variegated look that I got through this background. I didn't want it to be too busy because I wanted the elements that I'm going to be placing on top to be more of the focal point. So this is just going to be more of some color and texture in the background, and I thought the blue paired nicely with those papers that you see in the top right corner. So keep layering color until you get the look that you're going for. Those flower die cuts really add some nice texture to this. Alright, so we're ready to start doing some die cutting while that painting is all drying. I have Specimen here first. This is the file folder from that collection, and I've die cut that from some pattern paper. I love the fact that these die cuts also add the score lines to every single piece that require them, so it makes assembly so easy. Now also when I'm assembling, I'm using Simon Says Stamp redline tape, and mostly I use the 1/8 inch tape because there's a lot of very small areas and the 1/8 inch is the perfect size for it. I used the collector envelope for this piece here, and then I also used POSTALE to use as an envelope, which I will fill with some of the slides that are part of the Specimen collection. So redline tape is great for projects like this because it's super strong, it's going to hold really well, and it has no dry time. Now, I loved the fact that all of these pieces from Specimen, POSTALE, and also Collector all work together. So throughout this project, I grabbed labels from one set, words from another, and I just mixed and matched everything together to create the different pieces that I wanted for my project. Now, like I said, if you don't have all of the sets, you don't need them all in order to make really cool things like this. But I love the fact that they are so easy to combine together and create such beautiful details on different elements. So here's a label that I added the recorded word to. I die cut that from some black cardstock with a label die and then attach that to another label. So it creates some nice layers here. Now another thing I did is I wanted to add some leaf elements to my project. I'll pull in a Simon Says stamp die for that, but I wanted some variegated coloring for the background that I'm going to die cut those leaves from. So I thought I would reach for my favorite technique, which is ink smushing, and I'm using Distress inks in Pine Needle, Lucky Clover, and also Evergreen Bough and Salvage Patina. And I just layered these up on top of some watercolor paper, and I'm just blending these together, creating a variety of different greens. Here and there, I'll dry in between, but I won't dry completely. I just want some areas to be dry so that not everything is blending into one big smushed color. I want some definition between them. And what you're seeing me add the ink to is actually a clear pocket from Simon Says Stamp. It's super durable, it's also flexible, so I can see where I'm pressing the ink onto my project. It gives you a little bit more control when you do that smushing technique instead of putting it onto your craft sheet and then trying to pick it up. This way you can see exactly where you're putting it, and you can also keep more of those splatter areas if you want to. So this background is going to get die cut. I was really inspired by the leaves in the pattern paper, and that's what drew me to use the Simon Says Stamp olive branch leaves. So these are a pair of dies, and I'm going to cut them a couple of times from this paper so that I can have some beautiful leaf elements that I can mix and match between the other pieces that are going to be on my project. The slides in the Specimen collection are so cool. So I actually made a few of these, and I liked cutting them from some plain cardstock and then embellishing them as I wished. They also have that score line, so you can fold these in half, tuck the element that you want to place inside into it, and then you can go ahead and add some other details on top if you want. I pulled out some ephemera from Tim Holtz, and I'm going to fill those slides that I'm creating with that, trim it down to fit inside, and then I used red line tape around all the edges to close up the slide and sandwich all of that inside there. You could also turn this into a shaker if you wanted to too. These slides look really cool when you add some embellishment like foundry wax. I used foundry wax throughout this project, and I always like using my finger to apply it because I feel like it gives me a little more control. I know it's a little more messy, but I really like the more organic look that it provides than a brush. So I'll just set that foundry wax with my heat tool so that way it has that beautiful gilded finish. And this particular color I used was the copper one. So these slides look really cool, and they're going to go inside of our POSTALE envelope. I have to say, I think Specimen was my favorite collection for this particular project. I loved using the different pieces from that collection to make some really cool elements on this tag that I'm creating. Here I have these label pieces that I'm layering up, and I'm going to fill it with the word collect. So what I did was I die cut collect from some black cardstock, and everything that stayed inside of the paper after die cutting, I actually left there, put some glue on the back, and then I'm pressing them out of the paper so that way I have most of the letters easily attached to my label. Any of the leftovers that didn't get stuck inside the paper, I just glued down on their own after the fact. Another thing I loved about the collector collection is that the envelope has so many details, including those little rounded things that you can tie a bit of twine around to help hold the envelope closed. So what I did was I pulled in a couple of brads that were actually silver, but I wanted them to be that same copper color as the rest of my tag elements. So I'm going to just color the tops of them with my foundry wax so that I get that really nice copper tone. Then I just adhered the brads through those little circle elements and then attach them onto my envelope so that way I can then tie a bit of string around those little circles, and that will be the piece that helps close this envelope up. I used some May Arts twine for this, and honestly you can wrap this twine around these circles however which way you'd like. So it works really well, and it creates a really nice extra detail. You could have filled this envelope before closing it up. I actually didn't put anything in this envelope yet because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I figured I could go back and add something later. Now another thing I really liked was the fact that the file folder has a lot of options. You can use it as a literal file folder, but I saw in Tim Holtz's live stream that when he shared this new collection, some of the makers had created an accordion fold inside of some of the pieces like the file folder. So I thought that would be fun. I ended up creating my accordion fold out of a piece of cardstock that was 4 inches by 4 1/4. Then I scored on every 1/2 inch and got these really nice creases that I could then slip pages of other pieces inside of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this to the inside of my file folder here. So you can see how this is going to work. Those little recessed areas, that's where you're going to adhere your pages to, and I'll show you how I did that. I used red line tape to adhere this down onto my file folder. I put the adhesive on the final 2 tabs on each side. I'm going to put one of those tabs down first, butting this up against the crease of my file folder. Once I have that adhered, then I'll go ahead and adhere the other side, again, butting this up so it's all nice and tight. And then I can just fold this over and create a little bit of a binding right along that edge. And now we have this great little booklet effect. So inside you can put a variety of different page sizes inside. I actually did a selection of different sizes. So I pulled out some of the label shapes from a couple of the sets, POSTALE and Collector, and I just glued them randomly across this book, and that created some really nice levels of dimension. I even pulled in a couple of those Tim Holtz backgrounds. I'll have them linked in the video description below along with all the other pieces that I'm using today. But those kinds of things worked great for creating some really cool pages inside of my book, which then I could decorate with ephemera or elements that I created from the Tim Holtz Chapter 3 collection. For instance, I wanted to use this cute tab die that's part of the Specimen collection. I die cut it from some brown cardstock, and then I'm just going to add some details to it. So the first thing I did was add a bit of rub-on. Tim Holtz's botanical rub-ons are so cool for this kind of project. I liked the number 1723. I wanted to add that onto my tab. So I just burnished that onto that file tab. That's going to create some really nice texture and interest to the tag. And then I can add some ink blending because, of course, we need to distress it a little bit. It's old, right? So I'm pulling out a Simon Says Stamp detail blending brush. These are perfect for small things like this. And I'm just adding some walnut stain, one of the classics. I love this color. I added walnut stain here and there around it. I even went direct to paper with the ink pad to really darken up some of those edges. And that created this really cool antique looking file tab. So I glued that onto the top. I added a few more rub-ons onto that page. Another thing I really loved is those new alphabet dies. Those are the alphanumeric theory Thinlits. So good. And one of the things I love most is the fact that you get both small and larger versions of the same letters. So you've got options to be able to mix and match them. And there's even these little dash lines that you can add underneath the smaller letters if you want to combine them with the big ones, which is what I'm going to do here. So I die cut a bunch of the letters to spell out field notes. I stacked those up so that they were a stack of 3 letters each. So now we have these dimensional letters on top of this tag. As you can see, I've started to adhere a lot of my elements that we've been working on onto my tag. I used liquid glue for the letters, and then I brought in some foundry wax and added that onto certain sections of the letters to really distress them. I set that. I also added some of that foundry wax on the tag itself. I'm really trying to tie in all of that distressing and bringing it all together. So we're getting close. We're almost done. I thought I would add some extra embellishment with a few buttons. I love buttons. I don't know why. I've always have. I thought they would look cool to pair in a few of those. I picked out colors that were in the pieces, like the pattern paper. I brought in some dark blue. I had this cute flower one from Tim Holtz there on top of the leaves. A pink one matched the pink flowers. I also used one of those clips from Tim Holtz. I added a bit of foundry wax to it too to help close up my file folder booklet. And I thought because I didn't want to turn this into an actual tag, I'd close up the hole by using one of these metal labels from Tim Holtz. I just hot glued that over top of the hole that's part of the etc. tag. And that really cleaned things up. I liked how that looked with everything else. Of course, to make it look more authentic, I added a little bit more foundry wax to that too, because that helped tie in with the foundry wax that was already there. And there you have it. Our tag is complete. I mean, this is a really extensive project, but I hope that you got a good idea of how I made this. I hope that I have shown you how all of these Chapter 3 pieces work so well together. I mean, I mix and match so many of these new products into this one piece. I think it just goes to show you that you can use these with so many different elements, including other products like Simon Says Stamps dies. I used some stickers. Lots of different things were used on this project, and I really loved how it turned out. It was a labor of love for sure. Honestly, I was having a hard time stopping, but I'm glad I stopped where I'm at. I always could add a little bit more if I want to here and there, but for the most part, I think this project is done. I love how it turned out. I think it's super cool. It has a lot of things that I really love in it, which are the colors. I love flowers. I love butterflies. It's just something that really speaks to me, and I'm excited I get to share it with you all. So I hope you were inspired. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed. Don't forget, all the products that I used today are linked below in the video description or over on our Simon Says Stamp blog, so be sure to check that out. I will be back soon with more to share with you all, but until then, I hope you have a fabulous day, and thanks so much for watching.